I remember Al wrote a proposal, and then we just got working right away, and and the rest is kind of a blur. But
Right. But can you remember what your impressions were from that first meeting as we were telling you about the concept for the machine?
Yeah, I mean, it was still, for me personally, I was still, there was a lot of information to absorb. And I remember that, I think it was Danny that was insistent that he didn't want it to look like just another computer.
Another refrigerator.
Yeah, another refrigerator.
Another
exactly.
Unit. Yeah.
A vanilla white thing.
Yeah.
And so it was quite interesting to start and think about how people would interact with all of these connections internally within the machine, and I also remember that there was a effort on our part to at least explore, many different ways of doing it, whether it's things leaning against things or walking underneath it, or obviously until coming back to the hypercube, which obviously makes all the sense in the world.
Right, yeah.
And just simply from the functional thing. In fact, you can see there's the silver.
Oh.
I can bring that up.
Right.
And this was one of the explorations. Can you see the...
Yeah, turn it that way, right. And
again,
so,
it's very dusty.
Right, so the silver reflective parts were to represent where the boards would be coming
well, what
out,
it was, let me put this down without shaking it too much. So the model, those silver areas was really an area where it would use a filter, stainless steel filter, that's used in brewery to take out microscopic pieces of hops from the process. And the thing is if you look at the stainless steel, it looks perfectly normal, but you can see through it.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. So the idea in exploring this idea of the materials was, besides the black, which Danny liked a lot, the black, and you liked a lot, was to explore this idea of making a totally stainless steel connection machine, but with parts of it that you could see through. It would be a bit of magic, and it'd be the perfect cage for RF or radio frequency stuff.
Right,
so.
yeah.
And
Faraday cage.
Faraday cage. So that was just one other idea. So in exploring this idea, especially when it moved to the level of the hypercube and the various quadrants, then there was a sort of an approach to try to look at what types of materials could we find that were a little bit different than painted surfaces.
Right, yeah. And then also the idea that we wanted to let the lights show from the inside. We wanted to move the status lights from on the board to on the edge of the board so that they would be visible from the outside through a door that was either a mesh or a translucent material.
And it would allow the operators to see which quadrants were busy.
Right.
Yeah. So there was some visual feedback, right? I remember one thing that Eliot spoke about with IBM when he was trying to express what design character is. And he talked about, there's a very famous quote of his where he starts talking about, you strip the doors away and you expose these beautiful blue wires, these beautiful yellow wires and reds, and and this becomes the true nature of what the meaning of IBM is you get to the insides, and that's the true expression. Yeah. So anyway, it's very similar. Oh, speak louder. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Anyway, so that's...
But that was also, to pick up on that, that was also something we talked about with a connection machine that and that the I think we were all probably brought up on the sort of form follows function idea.
Mm-hmm.
I know with my Bauhaus impregnated father, I was definitely raised that way, and then the whole problem with the connection machine housing expressing the function of the machine was saying, okay, this is a completely different computer architecture. But if I think we talked about just making the outside out of see-through plastic, sort of like the visible man, the visible horse statues that I loved as a kid. But the problem was then you'd see cables and it'd look exactly like an IBM machine with cables.
Sure.
So in a sense, what Eliot Noyes was saying about the IBM cables really expressing the function of the machine was maybe true for computers as a generic, but as we were faced with the problem of saying why this connection machine was completely different from any other computer you've ever seen, it no longer worked. It was no longer enough to just show the cables.
Sure. Well, and what I'm trying to say there is with Mr. Noyes is he's just trying to make some sense out of what is an appropriate design character for a corporation. Not so much just the machine itself. So, and what's the unifying factor, which is don't apply anything, but evolve the character from what it is. So.
Right.